The thunder of hoofbeats echoed through Elmira Falls as Lillian Turner raced down the main street, her wedding dress billowing behind her like a cloud caught in a storm. Tears streamed down her face, her heart shattering with each pound of her horse's hooves against the packed dirt. Her wedding day, what should have been the happiest moment of her life, had transformed into the cruelest of betrayals. Colorado Territory, 1878. Lillian had been preparing for this day for months. The daughter of a once prosperous rancher who had fallen on hard times after her mother's death, she had agreed to marry Theodore Wallace, the town banker's son. It wasn't love, but it was security, a chance to save her father from financial ruin. That morning, she discovered that her mother's wedding ring, the only thing of value she had planned to bring to her marriage, the precious heirloom she'd entrusted to her father to clean before the ceremony, had been sold to pay off gambling debts. Her father, Edmund Turner, had promised it was just a temporary measure. He would buy it back, he swore. But as the hours ticked closer to the ceremony, the truth became clear. "I had no choice, Lily," her father had pleaded, his eyes bloodshot from whiskey. "Wallace wouldn't extend our loan again. I needed money for one last game to win it all back." The betrayal cut deep, but worse was learning that Theodore New had even suggested her father sell the ring to Samuel Blackwater, the owner of the local saloon and pawn shop. A test, Theodore had called it, to see how committed she was to their arrangement. Now, as she fled toward the open country beyond town, Lillian knew she couldn't go through with the wedding. Without her mother's ring, the ceremony felt hollow, a mockery of the sacred vows her parents had once shared. The sun was setting when her horse, exhausted from the punishing pace, began to slow. Lillian realized she had no plan, no destination, just the desperate need to escape. "Whoa there, miss," a deep voice called from behind a stand of cottonwoods. "That's dangerous country ahead." A tall cowboy emerged from the shadows, leading a chestnut stallion. Dust covered his denim pants and the blue shirt visible beneath his leather vest. A weathered Stetson sat atop dark hair that curled at his collar. "I don't care," Lillian said, her voice breaking. "I can't go back." "Running from something or someone?" he asked, approaching slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "A wedding," she admitted. His eyes a striking green that reminded her of spring grass after rain widened as he took in her appearance. The once pristine wedding dress was now stained with dust and tears. "That's quite a story you must have," he said. "Name's Ross Hawkins. I work at the Triple D Ranch north of here." Lillian Turner. "Well, Miss Turner, you look like you could use a place to rest and gather your thoughts. My campsite's just over that ridge. Nothing fancy, but there's coffee and food." Lillian hesitated. Her father had warned her about trusting strangers, especially drifters and cowboys. But something in Ross Hawkins' steady gaze reassured her. "Thank you, Mr. Hawkins." His camp was simple but neat: a small fire, a bedroll, and saddlebags leaning against a fallen log. Ross tended to her exhausted horse before brewing strong coffee in a battered pot. "Care to tell me why a beautiful woman is running from her own wedding?" he asked, handing her a tin cup. The kindness in his voice broke the dam. Words poured out: her father's gambling, her mother's death 3 years prior, the family ranch slowly slipping away, and finally, the indignity of her intended groom's test of loyalty. "My mother's ring was all I had left of her," Lillian whispered, "and they sold it like it was nothing." Ross listened quietly, occasionally stoking the fire. When she finished, he said simply, "Some men don't deserve the women who love them." "I didn't love Theodore," Lillian admitted. "It was an arrangement." "Then perhaps this is a blessing in disguise," Ross suggested, "though a painful one." As night fell, he offered her his bedroll while he kept watch. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Lillian. She found herself watching Ross as he stared at the stars, his profile strong against the firelight. "Tell me about yourself," she said suddenly. "Why are you out here alone?" Ross turned, surprise flickering across his features. "Not much to tell. Orphaned young, raised by my uncle who ran a small ranch in Texas. Been working cattle since I could walk." He paused. "Left Texas after the war. Too many ghosts." "The Civil War," he nodded. "Confederate cavalry." Not by choice. Texas didn't give young men many options. His voice grew distant. "Saw things no man should see. Did things I wish I could forget. And now, I go where the work is. Been with Triple D for about 8 months. Longest I've stayed anywhere in years." He smiled slightly. "Boss is a fair man, pays well. I've been saving." "For what?" "My own place someday. Small spread, nothing fancy." They talked through the night, sharing stories, dreams, and disappointments. By dawn, Lillian felt as though she'd known Ross Hawkins for years rather than hours. "What will you do now?" he asked as they watched the sunrise paint the eastern sky with gold and crimson. "I can't go home," she said. "Not yet." Ross seemed to wrestle with a thought. "The Triple D is always looking for help. Owner's wife, Mrs. Dolores Davis, might need someone to help with the household. She's expecting their 5th child." "You do that, speak for me." Mrs. Davis is kind, but stern. "You'd have to work hard." Lillian straightened her shoulders. "I'm not afraid of hard work." Ross smiled. "No, I don't imagine you are." The Triple D ranch sprawled across several thousand acres of rolling grassland. The main house, a 2-story structure with a wide porch, stood surrounded by cottonwoods and a neatly fenced garden. Several outbuildings, corrals, and a bunkhouse completed the settlement. Dolores Davis, a formidable woman with silver-streaked black hair and shrewd brown eyes, listened to Ross's explanation with skepticism. "A runaway bride?" she asked, eyeing Lillian's disheveled appearance. "Yes, madam," Lillian answered for herself, "though not by choice." Mrs. Davis raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" Lillian explained the situation, watching as the older woman's expression softened slightly. "Can you cook?" Mrs. Davis asked. "Yes, madam, and sew, clean, and manage a household. We can't pay much beyond room and board to start." "That's more than fair." Mrs. Davis nodded. "Very well, you'll share a room with my oldest daughter, Rebecca. She's 16 and could use some civilizing influence." She turned to Ross. "Hawkins, get back to the north pasture. Those strays won't gather themselves." "Yes, madam." He tipped his hat to Lillian. "Good luck, Miss Turner." As he mounted his horse, Lillian called out, "Thank you, Mr. Hawkins, for everything." He smiled. "My pleasure, madam." Days stretched into weeks at the Triple D. Lillian worked from dawn until dusk, cooking for the family and ranch hands, cleaning, mending, and helping care for the Davis children. The work was exhausting but satisfying. For the first time in years, she felt useful, appreciated. Ross Hawkins kept his distance, friendly but respectful when their paths crossed. Lillian found herself watching for him at mealtimes, disappointed when cattle work kept him away for days. "Hawkins is a good man," Daniel Davis told her one evening as she served dinner to the ranch hands. The ranch owner, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a sun-weathered face, rarely spoke directly to her. "Best hand I've had in years." "Yes, sir," Lillian replied, uncertain how to respond. "Saved my youngest boy from a rattler last month. Didn't even mention it until the child told his mother." Lillian wasn't surprised. In the brief time she'd known Ross, she'd recognized his quiet competence, his tendency to help without seeking recognition. July brought scorching heat, and the annual cattle drive to the railhead in Pueblo. Most of the hands, including Ross, would be gone for at least 3 weeks. The night before they departed, Lillian found Ross sitting alone on the porch steps of the bunkhouse, cleaning his saddle. "Thought you might want some extra biscuits for the trail," she said, offering a cloth-wrapped package. "Thank you." His fingers brushed hers as he accepted the gift. "How are you settling in?" "Well enough. Mrs. Davis says I have a talent for bread making. High praise from her." He hesitated. "Have you heard from your father?" Lillian shook her head. "No, but Rebecca told me there's talk in town that Theodore Wallace married Eliza Jenkins last week. Does that trouble you?" "No," she answered truthfully. "I wish them well." Ross nodded, seeming pleased. "And your father's ring?" "Your mother's, I mean." "Gone, I suppose. Mr. Blackwater wouldn't likely hold it long, perhaps." Ross stood, suddenly awkward. "I should finish packing." "Be safe," Lillian said, surprised at the emotion behind her words. "Always am," he replied with a gentle smile. The ranch seemed empty with most of the men gone. Lillian threw herself into her work, helping Mrs. Davis prepare for the baby due in September. They canned vegetables from the garden, sewed baby clothes, and began deep cleaning the house. One hot afternoon, as Lillian hung laundry, she spotted a rider approaching. As he drew closer, her heart sank. It was her father. Edmund Turner looked older, more haggard than when she'd last seen him. His clothes hung loosely on his frame, and his once proud posture was bent. "Lillian," he called, dismounting stiffly. "Thank God." "Father," she acknowledged, keeping her distance. "I've been searching for weeks," he said. "When you didn't return." His voice trailed off. "What do you want?" Lillian asked, her tone cooler than she'd intended. "To apologize." "To bring you home." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small cloth pouch. "And to return this." Lillian's breath caught as he opened the pouch, revealing her mother's ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond flanked by tiny pearls. "How?" she whispered. "Sold my pocket watch and your grandfather's rifles," Edmund admitted. "It wasn't easy. Blackwater had already sold it to a traveling jeweler, had to track him to Denver. Why now? Because I was wrong. Because losing you made me realize what's truly valuable." He held out the ring. "Please, Lily, come home." Dolores Davis appeared on the porch, watching the exchange with concern. "Mrs. Davis," Lillian called. "This is my father." After introductions and explanations, Mrs. Davis invited Edmund to stay for dinner. He accepted gratefully, and over the meal he shared news from Elmira Falls. "The Wallaces are in trouble," he reported. "Banks being audited. Seems Theodore was skimming funds. Whole family might face charges." "That's unfortunate," Lillian said, feeling a mixture of shock and vindication. "Our ranch is safe for now," Edmund continued. "I've stopped gambling, been working at the livery stable, paying down our debts honestly." Lillian studied her father, searching for signs of deception. "That's good to hear. Will you come home?" he asked again. "I need time to think," she replied. That night, lying in bed beside the sleeping Rebecca, Lillian turned her mother's ring in her fingers. The moonlight caught the diamond, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the wall. She should feel complete now, having reclaimed this precious link to her past. Yet something was missing, or someone. The realization hit her with startling clarity. In the short time she'd known Ross Hawkins, he had become important to her. More than important. Essential. When the cattle drive returned in early August, Lillian watched anxiously as the dusty, trail-weary men rode in. Ross was among them, tanned darker from weeks in the sun. Their eyes met across the yard, and his tired face broke into a smile that made her heart race. Later, after the men had bathed and eaten, Lillian found Ross at his usual spot on the bunkhouse steps. "Heard your father came," he said without preamble. "News travels fast. Small ranch." He glanced at her hand, where her mother's ring now resided on her right hand. "He brought back your ring." "Yes. You're going home then?" The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. I haven't decided, Lillian admitted. Father seems changed, but, Ross prompted when she fell silent. I've changed too. She met his gaze. I've learned I'm stronger than I knew, that I can make my own way. Yes, he agreed, you can. And I've learned. She hesitated, gathering courage. I've learned that there are good men in this world, men who help without expecting anything in return. Ross looked away, a flush creeping up his neck. I didn't do much. You saved me, Lillian said simply. Not just from being lost that night, but from a life that would have smothered me. You saved yourself, Lillian. I just pointed the way. They sat in companionable silence as dusk painted the sky in watercolor hues of orange and purple. I received my wages today, Ross said finally. With the bonus for the drive, it's enough. Enough for a down payment on a small spread. Old man Jensen's place, about 10 miles east. He's moving to California to live with his daughter. Lillian's heart sank. You're leaving, thought I might. He turned to face her fully. Unless I had a reason to stay. The implications of his words hung in the air between them. Lillian's pulse quickened. What kind of reason? She whispered. Ross took her hand, his calloused thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. The kind that makes a man want to build something permanent, something to last. Ross. I know it's sudden, he continued quickly. We've barely known each other 3 months. But I've never met anyone like you, Lillian. Your strength, your kindness despite everything you've been through. I find myself thinking about you when I should be focusing on cattle or horses. A smile tugged at Lillian's lips. Is that so? It's downright distracting, he admitted with a rueful grin. Davis caught me daydreaming and nearly took my head off. Lillian laughed, joy bubbling up inside her. I find myself similarly distracted. Ross's expression grew serious. I don't have much to offer yet. The Jensen place needs work. It'll be years of hard labor before it's profitable. I'm not afraid of hard work, Lillian reminded him. No, he agreed softly. You're not afraid of much, are you? Just one thing, she admitted. Losing someone I love before I've had the chance to tell them. Ross's eyes widened. Lillian. I love you, Ross Hawkins, she said, her voice steady despite the thundering of her heart. I think I have since that first night by your campfire. He pulled her gently into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that started tenderly and quickly deepened with hunger and longing. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. I love you, Ross whispered against her hair. God help me, I do. The next day, Ross approached Daniel Davis for permission to court Lillian officially. The rancher gave his blessing, along with a warning. She's become like family, Davis said. You break her heart, you'll answer to me. Yes, sir, Ross replied, though I intend to do just the opposite. Edmund Turner was more difficult to convince. When Ross rode to Elmira Falls to ask for his daughter's hand, the older man was initially resistant. You're a cowhand, Edmund said bluntly. No steady prospects. I'm buying land, Ross countered. The Jensen property. It's small but good grazing. I've saved enough for the down payment and have the bank's commitment for the rest. Ranching is risky. So is gambling, Ross replied evenly. Edmund flinched at the implied rebuke. Touché. Sir, Ross continued, I love your daughter. I'll work every day of my life to make her happy and secure, but with or without your blessing, I intend to ask her to marry me. Edmund studied the younger man for a long moment. She loves you, she says so. And you believe that's enough. Love doesn't pay debts or put food on the table. No, Ross agreed, but it gives a purpose to the work that does those things. After a tense silence, Edmund nodded. Very well, you have my permission. Ross proposed to Lillian that evening beneath the cottonwood where they'd first talked through the night. He offered no ring, explaining that he wanted her to choose one herself. I don't need another ring, Lillian assured him, showing her mother's band. "This is enough." "No," Ross insisted. "That's your past, your heritage. Our marriage should have its own symbol." They planned a small ceremony for October, after the fall roundup. Lillian wrote to her childhood friend, Mary Stewart, who agreed to come from Denver to stand as her witness. Ross asked Tom Reeves, a fellow ranch hand and friend, to be his. 2 weeks before the wedding, disaster struck. A flash flood swept through Elmira Falls, destroying several buildings, including the livery stable where Edmund worked. He was injured trying to save the horses, his leg crushed beneath falling timbers. Lillian rushed to her father's side, finding him pale and feverish in the town's small doctor's office. "He needs surgery," Dr. Hamilton explained. "In Denver. Without it, gangrene will set in." "How much?" Lillian asked. The sum the doctor named made her blanch. It was more than she and Ross had saved for their new life combined. "I'll find it," she promised her semi-conscious father. Ross arrived the next morning, having ridden through the night when a messenger brought news of Edmund's injury. "We'll use our savings," he said immediately when Lillian explained the situation. "But the Jensen place, land can wait. Your father can't." Edmund protested weakly when told of their decision. "No," he rasped. "Your future is nothing if built on your suffering," Lillian insisted. As Ross went to the bank to withdraw their savings, Lillian removed her mother's ring, studying it with a mixture of sadness and resolution. "I'll get it back someday," she whispered, kissing the band before wrapping it carefully in a handkerchief. When Ross returned, she showed him the ring. "This will make up the difference for the doctor and our travel expenses to Denver." Lillian, "No, it's just a thing," she said firmly. "My father's life is worth more." Together they approached Samuel Blackwater, who examined the ring with professional detachment. "Not worth what your father paid to get it back," he said bluntly, "but I can give you $30. It was enough." Dr. Hamilton accompanied them on the journey to Denver, keeping Edmund comfortable with morphine. The surgery was successful, though the doctor warned Edmund would always walk with a limp. During their 2-week stay in Denver, Lillian and Ross decided to proceed with their wedding plans, albeit with modifications. They would marry in Denver, with Mary Stewart and her husband as witnesses, before returning to Elmira Falls. The night before their wedding, Ross seemed unusually nervous, disappearing for several hours in the afternoon without explanation. Cold feet. Lillian teased when he finally returned to their boarding house. "Never," he assured her. "Just some last-minute arrangements." The ceremony was simple, held in Mary's parlor with only the Stewarts, Edmund, propped up on a sofa, and the minister present. Lillian wore a plain blue dress borrowed from Mary, while Ross wore his best shirt and a new black vest purchased for the occasion. When the minister reached the part about exchanging rings, Lillian felt a pang of regret. They had agreed to forego this tradition, planning to purchase simple bands when their finances recovered. "The ring, please," the minister prompted Ross. To Lillian's surprise, Ross reached into his pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch. "I've carried this since I was 18, he explained, opening the pouch to reveal a simple gold band. "It was my mother's. She gave it to me before she died, told me to give it to a woman worthy of it." His voice roughened with emotion. "I've never met anyone worthy until you." Tears filled Lillian's eyes as Ross slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if made for her. "With this ring I thee wed," Ross said, his green eyes never leaving hers. The years that followed brought both hardships and joys. The Jensen place, renamed Hawkins Ranch, slowly transformed under their care. A harsh winter claimed half their small herd the first year, forcing Ross to take temporary work at neighboring ranches. Lillian lost their first child to miscarriage, a boy they had already named James in their hearts. Yet they persevered. By their 5th anniversary, the ranch was modestly successful, with 50 head of cattle, a small apple orchard Lillian had planted, and a sturdy cabin Ross had expanded twice to accommodate their growing family twin girls, Sarah and Emma, born in their 3rd year of marriage, and a son, William, just 6 months old. One crisp October morning, as golden leaves drifted from the cottonwoods, Ross returned from Elmira Falls with supplies and the mail. "Package for you," he said, handing Lillian a small parcel. Curious, she unwrapped it while the twins played at her feet and William nursed at her breast. Inside was a familiar cloth pouch and a note in her father's handwriting, "To replace what was sacrificed for me. With love and gratitude, Father." With trembling fingers, Lillian opened the pouch. Her mother's ring lay inside, gleaming as if it had never left her possession. "How?" she whispered. "I might have helped him track it down," Ross admitted with a smile. "Took some doing. It had made its way to a jeweler in San Francisco. You knew, since last spring, wanted it to be a surprise." Lillian slipped the ring onto her right hand where it had resided before. On her left, her mother-in-law's band caught the sunlight, the gold burnished from years of wear. "Perfect," Ross murmured, leaning down to kiss her. "Which one?" Lillian asked. "Both," he replied. "The past and the present, just like us." That night, with their children sleeping peacefully, Lillian and Ross sat on their porch watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. "Did you ever imagine this?" Lillian asked, her head resting on his shoulder. "That night when you found me running from my wedding?" "Not in my wildest dreams," Ross admitted. "I just saw a woman in trouble." "My hero," she teased gently. "No," he said seriously. "You saved yourself, Lillian. You had the courage to run from what was wrong for you. And the wisdom to recognize what was right when I found it," she added, squeezing his hand. Ross smiled. "We recognized each other, I think." "Yes," Lillian agreed, "like two halves of something broken finally made whole." They sat in contented silence, listening to the night sounds of their ranch, the soft lowing of cattle in the distant pasture, the whisper of wind through the cottonwoods, the occasional hoot of an owl. "We should check on the children," Lillian said eventually. "In a minute," Ross replied, drawing her closer. "I want to remember this moment." "We'll have countless more," she assured him. "God willing," he agreed, "but each one is precious, especially when I remember how close I came to never finding you." Lillian turned in his arms, studying the face she knew as well as her own, the laugh lines at his eyes, the small scar above his right brow from a ranch accident 2 summers ago, the stubble that would be a full beard by morning if he didn't shave. "I love you, Ross Hawkins," she said simply. "And I love you, Lillian Hawkins," he replied, his lips finding hers in a kiss that still held the same tenderness and passion as their first. Above them, a shooting star streaked across the velvet sky, a fleeting moment of brilliance in the vast darkness. Like the day he'd found her on the road, Lillian thought. A chance encounter that had changed everything. They had both lost so much, sacrificed rings and dreams and security. Yet in finding each other, they had gained something far more precious, a love built on mutual respect and shared hardship, on small triumphs and daily kindnesses. It wasn't the life Lillian had envisioned for herself as a young girl. It was better. Harder, perhaps, but infinitely more satisfying. A life of her own choosing, with a man who saw her as she truly was and loved her completely. As they walked hand in hand back to their home, to check on their sleeping children, and then retire to their own bed, Lillian felt a profound sense of gratitude for her father's mistakes that had set her on this path, for Ross's timely appearance on that desperate day, for the ring he had slipped onto her finger, offering not just his name but his heart. Some would call it luck or coincidence. Lillian preferred to think of it as destiny.